Folks, with the national championship game last night, that means that we're officially in the off season. And I'm checking my watch here, Pickle. My watch says that it's Tuesday. And you know what Tuesdays in the off season mean?
Math Tuesday.
It's time for Math Tuesday.
Math Tuesday.
It's Math Tuesday here on Texas Football Today.
I'm so happy.
The triumphant return of
America's literal favorite segment.
Math Tuesday, where we dive into the numbers and talk a little bit about the nitty-gritty of football across the state of Texas. And today, with the help of our friend Jerry Forrest at PixtonPrep.com, who I hope is feeling better, we are going to take a look at the Dave Campbell's Texas Football computer projections. So, folks may know that if you're a Dave Campbell's Texas Football subscriber on TexasFootball.com, you can see every week, usually Tuesday or Wednesday, we have a computer projection for every Texas high school football game. All 600 plus, however many there are, we have a projection. Now, a couple of caveats. If you play a JV team, we don't have a projection for that. Mm-hmm. If you play an out-of-state team, because we can't measure that out-of-state team, we don't have a projection for that. But we do have projections for every Texas high school football game across the state of Texas. And so I figured we would take a look at how we did. Because basically, if you haven't seen them, it'll say that if Tepper High is visiting Pickle High on Friday night, and the computer can say, okay, Pickle High is projected to win by 6 points.
50.
Be something like that, right? And so, but in the end, you know, those are just projections. Those are just predictions by an unfeeling robot. Let's take a look at how the computer projections went in 2022. And we'll start with the biggest picture, which is this.
This is cool.
There were 6,682 UIL Texas high school football games in 2022, and the computer correctly projected the winner 81.2% of the time.
That's insane.
81.2% of the time, they projected that. Now, one number to throw out there is that there are actually, if you want to get really nitty-gritty, there were actually 6,800. But of those 6,800, 118 of them the computer had as too close to call. So the computer doesn't make a pick on that. They say, "Oh no, it's too close to call. It's a pick 'em type game." So you less that because the computer doesn't have a projection on that. The computer projected 6,682 games and got 81.2% of them right. Pretty good, I would say.
Yeah,
I would say
I mean,
an 82% clip projecting the winner.
Especially out of that many games. Like if that sample size was 200 games, 81 wouldn't be that impressive. But
it projected the winner 61.2 or 81.2% of the time in UIL Texas high school ball games. That includes, by the way, that's any game involving a UIL Texas high school football game. We did not have all, so that includes like if you are a UIL team playing a private school team, but this does not include private school team playing private school team. We can get those numbers as well, but I would tell you they'll be pretty similar. I focused mainly on the UIL here, UIL Texas high school games. So 81.2% of the time. That's the top line. Let's dive a little bit deeper because we mentioned that we do projections, projected margins for each one. Pickle High, 6-point projected winner over Tepper High. This is probably exactly what you want to see from a computer model. When the game was within 1 to 4 points, projected to be 1 to 4 points, the computer got it right 56.2% of the time. That, to me, is impressive.
Yeah.
Because what you're saying is that it's a literal coin flip, and the computer is kind of sniffing out who should win that game.
Yeah, anything over 50% is really impressive.
Yeah, right. Should be, right? 56.2. As you zoom out, if a team was projected to win by between 5 and 9 points, they got 67.5% of them right. Okay, more than 2/3 of them right. If you're projected between 10 and 14 points, 10 points to 2 touchdowns, 76.8% correct. It keeps going up between 15 and 20 points, 82.6%. And if you were projected to win by 21 points or more, the computer predicted it right 98.7% of the time.
Darn near perfect.
Okay? So basically, if the computer projects you to win by 21 or more points, you can almost take it to the bank.
Mm-hmm.
But you couldn't always take it to the bank, Pickle, because what we always hear every week is about the big upsets, right? So according to the computer projections, here were the biggest upsets of the year. In week 2, Winters beat El Dorado 18-12. Winters was projected to lose by 45 points. That is the largest margin largest underdog to win a game this year. In week 3, in the 6-man ranks, Whiteface beat Turkey Valley 64-50. Whiteface was a 41-point underdog in that game. Now, one thing to keep in mind, I think it's really interesting you see these things early, right? You see these, especially all three of these are early in the season, right? In the end, that ended up not being all that much of an upset. You see, because Whiteface ended up being a lot better than we thought, 9-3. Turkey Valley ended up being 5-5 and actually missing the playoffs. So that actually is not all that. In hindsight, that's not that surprising, knowing what we know. But early on, the computer was still very in love with Whiteface or with Turkey Valley. Didn't know a ton about Whiteface, and sure enough, they spring the big upset.
I was going to say it's crazy that you look at the biggest regular season upsets and you see that they were all within the first 3 weeks of the season.
That's the thing.
Which really shows the accuracy of once you get a little bit of sample data,
once you get more
data, it really does figure it out.
And then you see in week 1, the big upset in week 1 was Crockett beating Marlin 48-31. Now, the computer doesn't know that Marlin was a preseason darling for us. We really liked what Marlin had. They ended up going 7-5.
They didn't know that they lost Darian Gillette.
They didn't know they lost Darian Gillette. But Crockett ends up going and winning as a 40-point underdog. And so those were the 3 biggest upsets of the regular season. But you mentioned, Pickle, that those were early in the season. Early in the season, while the computer, a lot of it's based on preseason. It's all based on preseason projections at that point.
Yeah, Marlin
right?
was a state semifinal team last year.
We thought was going to be really good. Those were the biggest upsets in the regular season. But then you get to the playoffs, and at that point, the computer has a lot of data. It's got a full season worth of data. That doesn't mean there's not upsets in the playoffs. These were the 4 biggest upsets in the playoffs. 4A Division I area round. Madisonville 9, Belleville 3. Madisonville was a 28-point dog in that game. And I remember we came in here after that on Monday and were like shocked.
Oh, yeah, because Belleville not only – the one thing that the computer definitely loves is dominance. Yes. And that's something that Belleville had. They were mulling over people.
Yes, they absolutely were. Lakey 39, Leverett's Chapel 39-35 in the bi-district round. Lakey was a 28-point underdog in that one. Remember, that was a Leverett's Chapel team that had been cruising. They'd won 9 straight. They looked really, really good. But in the end, they had a win over Oakwood, which was really their signature win. But in the end, they get in the playoffs, and Lakey, who entered the playoffs at 5-5, they end up, I think, by virtue, in a lot of ways, you start looking back at how did this happen. Well, Lakey played a hellacious schedule. Lakey played Erie County. They played Medina in district play. They played a couple really good private school teams in San Antonio Town East Christian and Bulverde Bracken Christian, and lost to those 3 teams. But they're all close, and maybe we should have seen that coming, but Lakey pulled a big upset. Going back to 4A Division I, you remember El Paso Riverside was a real kind of sexy pick there in 4A Division I Region 1. Big Spring made short work of them in the first round of the playoffs, beating them 38-35. That's a typo on my part. 38-35. Big Spring was a 26-point dog in that game. 26-point underdog. That game was in Fort Stockton. They went out and they took it to them. 38-35. 26-point underdogs to get the win there. The other one, 3A Division II regional final. If you thought Harmony beating Newton was a huge upset, You're right.
You're correct.
Harmony was a 24-point underdog according to the computer and was able to pull out the victory. So those are the 4 biggest upsets of the playoffs there. When the computer had a lot of data and understanding how things work. If you are interested in the if you look at the state championship games, and let me see if I can pull this up. Do this real quick. I've got a spreadsheet of all the games thanks to our friend Jerry Forrest. The computer had 3 games that were too close to call. Hawley Refugio, South Oak Cliff Port Neches Groves, and Duncanville North Shore. Kind of your mileage may vary on all 3 of those. Duncanville North Shore was obviously it lived up to a coin flip hype. South Oak Cliff and Port Neches Groves
pretty for about
close,
3/4,
and then Hawley just mowed down Refugio. Yeah. It got 2 of them wrong. China Spring. It picked Bernie over China Spring by 5. That ended up being incorrect. And then it picked Mart over Albany by 7, and that ended up being incorrect. But it got the rest of them. Right in all of those. So those are. So I guess the theoretically will go 7, 2, and 3. Essentially, is the way that it broke in the state championship games. So there you have it, a dive into how the Texas high school football game projections on TexasFootball.com did. In the end, I look at the top line, 81.6%, and I think that's pretty darn good.
I do too.
I think you take that pretty much every day and 6 times on Sunday.
Yeah, because you've got to remember too. One, the computer cannot understand, they don't know about injury. It doesn't know about injury going into it, so I think that plays a huge factor. And then 2, especially when it gets to the playoff times, the fact that the margin of victory, we want upsets in the playoffs. We would be sad if there weren't those upsets in the playoffs. So to see the margin of victory not be near as much as it was in week 1 when it was a 40-point loss, it definitely shows the progression of how it really starts to figure stuff out.
And that's the thing. You're exactly right. The mark of in my opinion, a computer system that we're looking for is the more data it gets, the more accurate it gets. And so maybe what I'll do next is I'll go week by week and figure out what the accuracy was each week. Theoretically, it should be a relatively straight line going up and just get more accurate as it goes on. Obviously, weird things happen because it is Texas high school football, but that's what I'd be interested. I might break that down next with the remainder of my free time here today. So there you have it, Math Tuesday.
Math Tuesday.
Thanks so much for watching that video. If you would like more and to be notified when they come out, go ahead and click that subscribe button right down there. You can also watch Texas Football Today every day live at noon on TexasFootball.com, Facebook, Twitch, and right here on YouTube. For more of the best coverage of Texas football in the Lone Star State, go to TexasFootball.com/subscribe.